Before the house was a house, it was just a field. My grandfather stood in it for a long time, before he ever broke the first ground. He said you have to listen to the land first, see what it wants to be before you decide what you're gonna make it into. Most people rush that part. He never did. He built the porch first, which everybody thought was backwards. Said, I wanna sit somewhere and look at what I'm building. Before I build it, know what I'm working toward. Took him 3 months to frame the house after that. Said every nail he drove, he knew exactly why. Knew which room would catch the morning light, knew which window his wife would stand at, making coffee while he worked the field. That porch is still the first thing you see coming down the long gravel drive. Boards replaced twice now, but the shape is the same. Same angle, same view of the field. I sit there sometimes early on a Saturday, before anyone else is up, and I try to feel what he felt, standing in that field, deciding what it wanted to be. This porch was here before the house, before the garden, before the well, before 3 generations learned to walk on the same floorboards worn to silk. This porch was built to look at something, and what it looks at is still there. Same field, same tree line, same sky, just different people sitting in the same chair. My daughter asks me sometimes why I sit out here alone. I tell her I'm not alone. This porch is full of everyone who ever sat in the same spot, looking at the same field in different light. She doesn't fully get it yet, but she will, the way I didn't fully get it until I was 40, until I sat here after my grandfather's funeral and suddenly understood exactly what he built. The field doesn't know how many seasons have passed. The oak tree at the corner doesn't count years. The sky doesn't remember who looked up at it, but we do. That's what the porch is for, a place to sit and remember and look out at something that doesn't change the way we do, something that holds still long enough for us to figure out what we're looking at. This porch was here before the house, before the garden, before the well, before 3 generations learned to walk on the same floorboards worn to silk. This porch was built to look at something, and what it looks at is still there. Same field, same tree line, same sky, just different people sitting in the same chair. He died in that chair, actually. Fell asleep on a Sunday afternoon, the way he always did after lunch. My grandmother found him still sitting up, looking at the field like he always had. She said later, she said, he looked completely peaceful, like a man who had done exactly what he came to do. I refinished the chair last spring, sanded it down to bare wood. Found his initials carved underneath the arm. Didn't know they were there. Must have done it when he built it, just for himself, just to mark the thing he made. I put a coat of oil on it and left the initials, and I sat back down in it and looked at the field the way he always did. Same field, same share, same sky. September has a way of arriving quietly, like it doesn't want to make a fuss, just starts changing things slowly. The light shifts first, then the air. Then one morning you walk outside and something is different. You can't name it exactly, but the summer is over and you know it. The garden is giving its last things now. The tomatoes coming in faster than I can use them. The squash getting bigger than anyone needs. I pick everything anyway, out of respect for what the season gave. Stack it on the counter, the windowsill. Call the neighbors, bring them bags. This is how the garden says goodbye. I've been here for 23 Septembers now, on this same piece of ground, and every one of them has felt like this, like something beautiful is completing itself without sadness. That's the thing. I don't feel sad when September comes. I feel grateful, which is different. Grateful for what grew, what held, what made it. September doesn't rush the leaving, takes its time, it gets it right. Turns everything it touches into gold before it hands the season over to the night. And I've learned something from the way it goes, about how to let a good thing end, with grace, with gratitude, with open hands, ready for whatever comes around the bend. The hummingbirds left on a Tuesday. I didn't see them go, they just weren't there. One morning the feeder was untouched, and I knew they'd started south without telling me. They never say goodbye, they just leave. When the time is right, they simply go. I try to be more like that. When it's time to go, just go. The light at 4 o'clock is different now. Comes in lower through the kitchen window, hits the floor in a way it doesn't in summer. Longer shadows, softer angles. My wife noticed it before I did. Said the light's changing, you see that? I said I see it. We both just stood there watching it move. September doesn't rush the leaving, it takes its time, it gets it right. Turns everything it touches into gold before it hands the season over to the night. And I've learned something from the way it goes, about how to let a good thing end, with grace, with gratitude, with open cross the rest the seat again. I am part of that arc too, and September reminds me of it more than any other month, more gently than any other teacher. I'll put the garden to bed next weekend, pull the stakes, turn the soil over, tuck it in for the winter ahead, thank it for everything it gave. And then I'll sit on the porch with something warm in my hands and watch September finish, the most beautiful thing it does. September, getting it right, open hands.
Cattle don't know what day it is, they just know when the light changes, know when it's time to move toward the water, know when the weather is coming in. I've been trying to learn that from them for about 30 years now, just knowing things without having to think about it, just reading what's already there. There's a way the wind moves the grass right before a storm that I know now. Took me a decade to learn it, now I feel it before I see it. The cattle already knew they were moving toward the low ground before I even looked at the sky, before the radio said anything. My father called it reading the land, said every piece of ground talks to you if you stay on it long enough, if you pay attention more than you talk. He'd been on this ground for 50 years by the time he taught me to listen. Said I'm still learning things from it, and that seemed like exactly right to me. Out here the land does the teaching, if you've got the patience to be taught, if you can slow down enough to notice what the grass, the wind, the cattle know. I've been a student of this ground for as long as I can remember, and the thing I love most about it is I'm still not done learning. The creek runs different in dry years, slower, but it doesn't stop. My grandfather said that creek has never once completely dried. Not in 100 years of record here. I think about that on the hard summers when the pasture is burning brown. That creek kept going through all of them. There's a red-tailed hawk that works this field, has worked it every summer I can remember. Probably not the same hawk
30 years, but always one, always the same corner. I've decided it's the same hawk, just living longer than makes sense. Or maybe it's a different one who inherited the corner the way I inherited this field. Out here the land does the teaching, if you've got the patience to be taught. If you can slow down enough to notice what the grass, the wind, the cattle know. I've been a student of this ground for as long as I can remember, and the thing I love most about it is I'm still not done learning. At the end of the day, I walk the fence line the way my father did, the way his did. Not to check anything in particular, just to be on the ground, moving through it. Feel the evening coming in, hear the cattle settle in. Watch that hawk make his last pass before he goes wherever hawks go at night. And I think this is the whole thing. Right here, this walk, this field, this light. This is what I was put here to do. And I am exactly where I should be. Still not done learning, exactly where I should be. My neighbor Earl has lived next door for 40 years. We've never had a conversation longer than 10 minutes, but we've had about 4,000 10-minute conversations. And I know everything that matters about him. Know his wife's name was Doris, and she passed in 2019. Know his son is in Phoenix and calls every Sunday. Know he takes his coffee black and his pie warm. Know he checks his mailbox at exactly 2:15. He fixed my fence once without asking. I came home and it was just done. Didn't say anything about it for 3 days. Then mentioned it over the mailbox. He said it was lean and bothered him to look at. I said, "Thank you, Earl," and he said, "Yep." That was the whole conversation. Best neighbor I've ever had. We traded tomatoes all August, his beefsteaks for my Cherokee purples. Neither of us needed the other's tomatoes. We have plenty of our own, but we traded them every week anyway. Left them on the fence post without ceremony. That's a language, what we were speaking, a language without words, but perfectly clear. Good neighbors don't need much explaining. They just show up in the right moments.
They fix what's broken without being asked. They trade tomatoes they don't need. They wave from the driveway at the same time every morning. They let you be quiet when you need to be quiet, and somehow they're always there when quiet isn't enough anymore. Last winter I had a bad week. Nothing dramatic, just a hard week. The kind where everything is fine technically, but nothing feels fine. Earl knocked on my door on a Thursday, said he made too much chili, did I want some? I said yes. He handed me a pot, left. We didn't discuss it further, but I ate that chili and I felt better. Sometimes that's exactly what help looks like. His lights go off at 9:15 every night. I know this the way I know the creek sounds, the way I know the smell of my own land, without thinking about it anymore. And if those lights stayed on past 10, I'd walk over and knock on that door without needing to know why. That's 40 years of paying attention. Good neighbors don't need much explaining. They just show up in the right moments. They fix what's broken without being asked. They trade tomatoes they don't need. They wave from the driveway at the same time every morning. They let you be quiet when you need to be quiet, and somehow they're always there when quiet isn't enough anymore. I hope I've been that for him too. I think I have in my way. 40 years is a long time to be next door to someone and not know how much they matter until you try to imagine the place without them, and you can't quite do it. Earl's talking about maybe moving closer to his son. Says Phoenix is where the family is now. I haven't said much about it. It's his life and his decision. But I've started paying attention differently to the 2:15 mailbox run, to the 9:15 lights going off, to the pot of chili that might not come again. Paying attention the way you do when you realize something might be ending. Good neighbors, 40 years, paying attention. I found an old journal of my grandmother's in a box in the attic last November. She wrote in it from 1951 to 1953, then stopped without explanation. The last entry is about a Tuesday.
just an ordinary Tuesday. What she cooked, what the weather was, what my grandfather said at dinner. She wrote the way she talked, which I remember even though she's been gone 27 years now. The handwriting is careful, unhurried, like she had all the time she needed. Like Tuesday was not a thing to rush through, but a thing to record, to keep, to say, this happened, I was here. There's an entry in July of '52 about a thunderstorm that knocked out the power. She and my grandfather sat on the porch in the dark, listened to it pass. She wrote that it was one of the nicest evenings she could remember in a long time. No electricity, no radio, just the storm and each other and the dark. I've read that journal 4 times now. Different things hit me each time. The first time I cried at the ordinary parts, the grocery lists, the neighbor's name, the price of eggs that week, all of it gone now, except these pages, this record of Tuesday, this proof that she was here and present and alive. My own kids don't keep journals, nobody does anymore, not really. Everything is photographed, but nothing is written, which is its own kind of keeping, I suppose. But photographs don't tell you what she cooked, don't tell you what he said at dinner, don't tell you that the storm on that July night was one of the nicest evenings she could remember. I started writing things down after finding it. Nothing grand, nothing I'd want read aloud. Just Tuesdays, just what was cooked, just what the weather was, what was said. Proof that I was here, present, alive, in case someone finds it in a box someday and reads about an ordinary Thursday in November and feels less alone because of it. The ordinary things are the whole thing. The Tuesday dinners, the storm on the porch, the price of eggs, the neighbor's name, the careful handwriting that nobody rushes. This is what remains when everything else is gone. The record of a life that paid attention to the small and wholly ordinary things that make a life worth recording. I put the journal back in the box, but carefully this time wrapped in cloth. Wrote her name on the outside of the box. In the years 1951 to 1953, and put it somewhere the grandkids might find it the way I found it on a November afternoon in an attic full of ordinary things. Ordinary things, the whole thing. She was here. There is a particular quality of light in the hour before the sun fully clears the hill, where everything is lit from the side and nothing casts a harsh shadow. The barn glows amber, the dew holds the light. The fog sits low in the hollow below the field. Everything is the same as it always is, and completely different from anything else. I've been getting up early my whole life, not out of discipline, but out of wanting this hour that belongs to no one's schedule, that asks nothing and gives everything. The coffee is secondary, honestly. The reason I get up is to stand at this window, or better, on this porch, and be inside this light before it changes. My wife thinks I'm crazy, getting up at 5 on a Saturday when there's nothing pressing. She's right, but there's nothing pressing. That's exactly the point. This is the hour with nothing pressing, the only hour like it in the whole day. After this the world starts asking things of me, but right now it's just asking me to be here. First light on the field is a gift that nobody asks for, and everybody needs the world before it wakes to something else entirely than the world after. And the 10 minutes I stand here watching it are the most important 10 minutes of my day. Not because anything happens, but because I am here for it when it does. The birds stop before the light actually, the conversation going on in the dark. By the time I can see the field, they've been talking for half an hour. I hear the rooster 2 farms over, hear the Canada geese passing overhead, invisible above the fog, going somewhere I can't see it. I had a hard year a while back, the kind of year where nothing is right and you lose track of who you are. I got up early every morning that year, not because it fixed anything, but because this light was still here. Reliable in a way nothing else was, coming every morning whether I deserved it or not. First light on the field is a gift that nobody asked for, and everybody needs the world before it wakes to something else entirely than the world after. And the 10 minutes I stand here watching it are the most important 10 minutes of my day. Not because anything happens, but because I am here for it when it does. I think about all the mornings I slept through in my 20s and my careless years, all that first light landing on fields I wasn't awake to see. I can't get those back, but I think about them sometimes, and it makes the ones I don't miss feel like something I chose, something I showed up for, which is maybe the whole point of anything. The light has fully come now, fog is burning off the hollow. The barn is just a barn again. The dew is dry and the shadows are sharp. The day is beginning in its ordinary way, and I go inside to start it a little more ready than I would have been without those 10 minutes, without that gift. First light showed up for it, the whole point of anything.
Uncle had a shop behind his house where he fixed things for 40 years. Didn't charge much, sometimes nothing, if he knew money was tight. Lawnmowers, small engines, whatever came in, he just fixed them the way some people breathe, like it was the most natural thing, like broken things were just things waiting to be fixed. He smelled like oil and sawdust always, even at church, even at Christmas. Mama said it was in his skin by now. 40 years of fixing things gets into you, she said. I thought that was a complaint. Looking back, I think it was respect, dressed up as a complaint, the way love sometimes is. People came from 3 counties over for things nobody else could figure out. He never turned anyone away, never said he was too busy. Too busy wasn't really in his vocabulary. He'd look at whatever you brought him, turn it over in his hands, and say, give me a couple days. He fixed things because he loved fixing things, not for the money, not for the praise, because something broken sitting in a corner was a problem he could solve, and he'd rather solve it than walk past it. That's the whole philosophy right there. Some people fix things and some people don't, and the world needs both, but it needs the fixers more. He taught me the basics when I was 12, how to find the problem before assuming, how to listen to an engine before touching it, how to work slowly so you don't make more work, how to put something back together so it's better than before it broke. He said anybody can take something apart. The skill
killers and putting it back right. When he died, they had to clear out that shop. Took 3 families 2 full weekends. Every drawer was organized perfectly. Every tool had its place labeled. Every screw jar labeled by size. 40 years of system built in that shop. We all stopped at some point just to stand in it, just to be inside something he built so carefully. He fixed things because he loved fixing things. Not for the money, not for the praise, because something broken sitting in a corner was a problem he could solve. And he'd rather solve it than walk past it. That's the whole philosophy right there. Some people fix things, and some people don't. And the world needs both, but it needs the fixers more. I kept one of his screwdrivers, the one he used most, worn down at the handle. Fits his hand better than mine, but I use it anyway. And sometimes when something breaks around here, I hear him saying, give me a couple days. And I take my time with it, the way he taught me, put it back right, better than before it broke, better than before. Give me a couple days, the fixers.
County fair comes every August, 3rd week, same fairgrounds since 1934. The Midway is smaller than it used to be. Fewer rides, same prices on the food, but the agricultural pavilion is full, same as it's always been. Biggest pumpkin, best jam, finest quilt. People enter in the same categories that grandparents entered. My daughter showed a calf this year. She's been working with that animal since February. Getting up early, doing the feeding, the grooming, learning patience the hard way. The way animals teach you patience, which is without mercy and without sympathy, just by being themselves and requiring you to show up anyway. Didn't win her category, came in 3rd, which at 14 felt like nothing. But I watched her walk that calf out of the ring, holding her head up the way I hoped she would. Congratulated the winner, shook hands, came over to me and said she deserved it. Her animal was better conditioned. That's not nothing at 14. The county fair doesn't promise anything, doesn't owe you a ribbon or a trophy, just gives you a chance to show what you've got against everyone else showing what they've got. And you learn more in the losing than the winning, which sounds like something someone says. But standing in that ring watching my daughter, I understood it as something true. The 4-H kids are the ones I watch most. They work all year for this 1 week, for a ribbon that costs about 40 cents, for a handshake from a judge they'll never see again. But the work is the point, not the ribbon. The calf is the point, not the trophy. The getting up at 5:30 in February is the point. Everything else is just proof. My wife found her old ribbons in a box once, from when she showed rabbits 15 years old. She had 3 blue ones and a red. She remembered every animal, every year, every judge's comment on her card. I don't remember much from when I was 15, but I think I'd remember this. I think the fair stays with you. The county fair doesn't promise anything, doesn't owe you a ribbon or a trophy, just gives you a chance to show what you've got against everyone else showing what they've got. And you learn more in the losing than the winning, which sounds like something someone says. But standing in that ring watching my daughter, I understood it as something true. We walked the whole fair after, ate things we shouldn't, saw things we'd seen before. My daughter held her 3rd place ribbon the whole time without mentioning it. At the end of the night I said, same time next year. She said she wants to show the same calf again. Said she knows what to work on now. I said, yeah, me too. Not about the calf, about watching her same time next year. What to work on, the work is the point. Middle of January, when the ground is frozen and the sky is the color of old pewter, and the days are as short as they get, I do an inventory of the seed packets left over from last season and saved from this one. Spread them out on the kitchen table, under the lamp, read each packet. Plant the garden that's still 4 months away. There's something about planting a garden in January that is its own form of faith. The ground is iron and the air hurts, and I'm sitting here deciding where the tomatoes go, believing in warmth I cannot currently feel, believing in green I cannot currently see, trusting the cycle the way you trust a promise from someone who has never broken one. My grandfather kept a garden journal, every year the same notebook. What went in where, what worked,
what didn't. First frost date, last frost date, rainfall. Which varieties outperformed? Which ones he'd never try again? 50 years of January planning sessions, 50 years of faith in the thaw. I found one of his journals from 1978, which was a hard drought year, I know from family. He wrote at the top of the page, this year was difficult, next year will be better. Then he planned the whole garden out, every row, every variety, as if the difficulty of this year was simply information for the next. That's the thing about gardeners, about farmers, about anyone who works the ground. You can't be hopeless and do this. The ground requires optimism by definition, requires you to believe in a future you can't see yet, requires you to work towards something that might fail and plan to try again. And plant your faith in January with the seeds. My daughter came downstairs last night, found me at the kitchen table with the seed packets, asked what I was doing. I said planting the garden. She said it's January. I said I know. She sat down and started looking through the packets, asked questions about each one, and I thought, there it is, the thing that gets passed on without trying. You can't be hopeless and grow things, the ground won't allow it. Planting a garden in January is an act of pure faith, in warmth you cannot feel yet, in green you cannot see, in a spring that's coming anyway, whether you believe in it or not. I made my plan that night, drew the rows the way my grandfather did, put the packets in order, the way you'd put anything in order that you're counting on, that you're trusting with something. April will come or it won't, but the plan is ready and the faith is there in January with the seeds. Faith in January with the seeds. Next year will be better.
The drive back from my parents' house is 3 hours on a good day. I've done it more times than I can count, know every mile of it by heart. Know where the road dips before the river, know the exit with the good gas station, know the stretch of highway where reception goes. And the radio becomes just static and hiss. I used to hate that static stretch, 20 miles with nothing coming in. Now I don't skip past it, I turn the radio off and drive it in silence. And something happens in that silence, something settles that needed settling. 20 miles where nobody can reach me, 20 miles that are just mine. After a visit home, things need processing. All the love and the history and the weight of it. All the people I was before I was who I am. Still living in those rooms and those faces. My mother's hands, my father's voice. The way the house smells exactly the same as it did when I was 7, when I was 17. When I was leaving for the last time before this time. The drive home after visiting home is its own kind of homecoming. Something gets worked out in those hours that couldn't get worked out any other way. The road does something that conversation can't. The miles do something that time alone can't. I arrived somewhere different than where I was when I pulled out of the driveway. I stopped at the river overlook once on a particularly hard drive back. Not hard because anything went wrong, hard because everything went right. And I could feel it ending, feel the visit closing behind me. Like a book you didn't want to finish, I sat there watching the river for a while. My kids are teenagers now, soon they'll be making this drive themselves, or a version of it, whatever their version is. Coming back from wherever we end up, 3 hours of thinking about us, the way I think about my parents. And I wonder what they'll process, what they'll need those miles for. The drive home after visiting home is its own kind of homecoming. Something gets worked out in those hours that couldn't get worked out any other way. The road does something that conversation can't. The miles do something that time alone can't. I arrived somewhere different than where I was when I pulled out of the driveway. My father stood in the driveway the last time until the next time, the way he always does, watching until I turned out of sight. I watched him in the rearview mirror, getting smaller and still waving the way he has for 30 years of leaving and coming back and leaving. I'm almost home now, my own driveway, my own lights on. The version of me that left this morning is not exactly the version arriving. That's the whole trip, really. The going and the processing and the returning, different enough to appreciate it, same enough to know where home is. Arriving somewhere different, the drive back, still waving. Still waving. There's a maple tree at the corner of the field. My grandfather planted it as a sapling in
in 1961. Said he wanted to watch something grow that would outlive him, which it has. It's 60-some feet now, wider than 3 people standing arm in arm. In the fall it turns a color that I don't have an accurate word for. We used to climb it as kids, my cousins and I, summer after summer. The bark is smooth in the places we grab most, worn by 4 sets of hands over 10 years. You can still find the branch we call the seat, the one that grew out perfectly horizontal, just the right height, just the right angle. We didn't build it, it just was that way. My grandfather sat under it on a lawn chair every evening the last 10 years of his life. After the work was done, when the light was going amber on the field, he'd sit there and not do much of anything, by which I mean he was doing exactly everything. Watching the field he'd worked for 50 years, in the light of the tree he planted to outlive him. He planted it knowing he wouldn't see it full grown, knowing the shade it would make was not for him, knowing that somebody else would sit in it some afternoon 50 years from now, and feel grateful for something without knowing who to thank. That's the kind of faith I'm still learning, planting for the shade you'll never sit in. My son climbed it last summer for the first time, the same way I did, the same branches. Found the seed branch on his own without being told. Sat up there looking out at the field the way we all did, the way we do. I watched from below and didn't say anything, just let him have that discovery, let him find what's already there. In the fall when it turns that color that I still don't have a word for, I take a picture every year, same angle, have been doing it for 20 years. The tree looks the same in every photo, but I look different in the ones I'm in, getting older next to something that is just getting bigger. He planted it knowing he wouldn't see it full grown, knowing the shade it would make was not for him, knowing that somebody else would sit in it some afternoon 50 years from now, and feel grateful for something without knowing who to thank. That's the kind of faith I'm still learning, planting for the shade you'll never sit in. My son asked me once who planted it. I told him his great-great-grandfather in 1961, the year before I was born. He looked up at the tree for a long time and said, "That's a really long time ago." I said, "It is." He said, "It must have been really small then." I said, "It was just a stick, really." He thought about that, then said, "That's pretty cool." I said, "Yeah, it really is." I'm gonna plant something this fall, haven't decided what yet, something that'll outlive me if I do it right, something someone
will sit under without knowing my name, without knowing I thought of them when I put it in the ground. That's the faith, that's the whole thing. Planting for the shade you'll never sit in. That's the faith. Saturday morning in the hardware store has been open since 6:30. Same time every Saturday since before I was born. The parking lot has the same trucks in it, mostly a few new ones mixed in, but mostly the same. My father's truck used to be in that lot. Now mine is in approximately the same spot. I don't always need anything on Saturday, but I go anyway, the way you go to a place that you need to go to, that has nothing to do with errands, the way you go to church even when you're fine, just because it's where things make sense, where things are in their right order. Frank has worked the counter for 32 years, knows what you need before you explain it, know the way you describe a problem, and understand the actual problem, which are usually different. Can tell by how you walk in whether you've got something figured out, or whether you're hoping he does. The hardware store on Saturday morning is one of the last places where time moves right, where a problem has a solution, and the solution is probably on aisle 7, where the conversation is about what needs fixing, and whether it can be fixed, and how, and the answer is almost always yes. There's a group of older men who meet there, not officially, just show up around 7:30, coffee from the corner place. Stand in the seasonal aisle, which isn't seasonal, because the seasonal aisle is always there. They talk about what needs talking about, which is usually nothing important, which is to say, everything important. I've been invited into that group gradually, not formally, just included. A comment answered, a nod, a question asked of me. The way it works when you've been around long enough, when you've shown up enough Saturdays to become part of the furniture, part of the Saturday morning, part of what makes this place make sense. The hardware store on Saturday morning is one of the last places where time moves right, where a problem has a solution, and the solution is probably on aisle 7, where the conversation is about what needs fixing,
whether it can be fixed and how. And the answer is almost always yes. I bought 3 screws this morning that I could have ordered online in 30 seconds. Drove 20 minutes to get 3 screws and stood around for 45 minutes talking about nothing important, and drove 20 minutes home and felt better than I did before I went. Which is the point, which is the whole point, which Frank probably already knew. The answer is almost always yes. Saturday morning, the whole point. I've been keeping track of sunsets, not officially, not in a notebook, just in the way you track things that matter enough to notice. I've been watching them from this porch for 16 years now, and I can tell you they're not the same. No two of them are even close. Last Tuesday was all pink and orange, the kind that built slowly in the west, and suddenly the whole sky is involved, and you can't look away for about 8 minutes. My wife came out without being called. She just knew somehow, the way she always knows when something out there needs 2 people. Some evenings are subtle, a pale gold that fades to gray. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would photograph, but beautiful in its restraint. The way a quiet person in a room can be the most interesting one there, if you pay the right kind of attention, if you slow down enough to see it. My grandfather watched them from this same porch, my father too, before he moved closer to town. The porch has been watching sunsets since before any of us were watching with it. I think about that sometimes, all the ones that happened and were seen, or happened and weren't seen. The sky not caring either way. No 2 sunsets are the same. I can tell you that from 16 years of watching. The sky never runs out of what to do with the light, never repeats itself exactly, never phones it in, never gives you a lesser version just because it already did this yesterday, and the day before, and the day before. I've seen them in winter when the cold makes the colors sharper, more vivid, like the cold is clarifying something, burning off what's unnecessary. I've seen them in summer when the heat haze softens everything and the colors blend, and I've seen them in fall, which is the best time, and I'll fight about that. Last night was a long, slow one. The colors held for almost 40 minutes. Usually it's 8 or 10. Last night the sky seemed reluctant to close. I stayed out until I couldn't see anymore. Went in when it was properly dark. Felt something I can only describe as having been given something. No two sunsets are the same. I can tell you that from 16 years of watching. The sky never runs out of what to do with the light. Never repeats itself exactly. Never phones it in. Never gives you a lesser version just because it already did this yesterday and the day before and the day before. Tonight will be whatever it will be. I'll be out here either way. That's the agreement I've made with this porch, with this view, with this hour. That I'll show up and pay attention and be grateful and let it be whatever it is, which is always enough. Whatever it is, always enough. 16 years.
Mother kept every letter anyone ever sent her in a shoebox under the bed, which is where important things go in her house. Under the bed, in boxes organized by category. The letters go back to 1967, when my father was doing his service. 2 years of letters, almost daily. The handwriting changes over those 2 years. I read some of them after she gave me permission, which took years of asking. She finally said, all right, but read them here. Don't take them anywhere. So I sat at her kitchen table and read my father's handwriting from 1968, when he was 22 and riding home to a 20-year-old girl he was already sure. Wrote about ordinary things mostly, what they ate, what the weather was, the guys in his unit, small details. But underneath the ordinary things, you could feel what wasn't being said, the weight of what the ordinary things were standing in for. Because you couldn't say the real things in a letter. They wrote letters because that's what there was. No call and no message, no way to reach each other, except words on paper carried slowly. And somehow that was enough. Somehow two people stayed close across 2 years distance through ordinary things, written carefully and carried a long way. His handwriting got looser toward the end, not worse, looser. Like he was less afraid of the page, less formal with it, more willing to say things directly. By the last letters he was signing them, just yours, nothing else. Like the words had run out of being necessary. They've been married 54 years now, still in the same house, the shoebox still under the bed. She still reads them sometimes, she told me. I asked her what she looks for. She said she's not looking for anything. She said she just likes to read them, likes to hear his voice the way it was at 22. A little afraid, very certain. They wrote letters because that's what there was. No call and no message, no way to reach each other, except words on paper carried slowly. And somehow that was enough. Somehow two people stayed close across 2 years, and that distance through ordinary things, written carefully and carried a long way. My father doesn't know I read them. My mother made me promise. I've kept it, probably will forever. Some things are between two people, and the shoebox and the 54 years, and the fact that he came home and they never needed to write a letter again. Just yours, 54 years. He came home. The last week of summer has its own quality, different from the rest of it. The kids feel it before anyone announces it. Something changes in how they play. More urgency, more going back to things. The swimming hole one more time, the bike ride at dusk one more time, the catching of fireflies one more time. My daughter spent the last week of this summer mostly in the hammock in the backyard, reading, sleeping, watching the clouds. I left her to it, didn't assign anything, didn't make plans, didn't fill the time. Just let the last week be what it was. Let her be exactly where she was, in the hammock, in the last of it. The light is different in late August, the angle of it, the quality. It's still warm, but it's changed. The shadows are longer earlier. The morning has a chill under the warmth, and the evening comes in a little faster than it did in July, than it did in June, than it will again for a long time. The last week of summer knows what it is. it doesn't pretend it isn't ended. It just does what it does with more intention, more color, more warmth, more of itself. And I've learned to not rush through it, to not be already in September, while I'm still standing in August, to be where the light is, while the light is there. My son is heading back to school in the fall, his last year, which makes this last week means something it didn't mean in previous summers. I watched him and his friends the last few days, doing the same things they've done every summer, but more slowly, more deliberately, like they were saving it without saying so, like they knew something I didn't have to tell them. My wife and I sat on the porch the last night after the kids were in, just the two of us and the sound of August, the crickets, the warm air, the distant fireflies. She said she didn't want summer to end. I said, I know what you mean. We didn't say anything else for a while, because we'd said the whole thing. The last week of summer knows what it is. It doesn't pretend it isn't ending. It just does what it does with more intention, more color, more warmth, more of itself. And I've learned to not rush through it, to not be already in September, while I'm still standing in August, to be where the light is, while the light is there. September came on a Tuesday, the way it always does, without ceremony. The kids back in school, the house quiet, the hammock still in the backyard, with the impression of my daughter in it. I left it up longer than I needed to, let it hold her shape for a few more days, while I learned to be in September, while I let the light be what it is now. Be where the light is, while the light is there. The last week of summer, church picnic happens every June, third Sunday, same pavilion since the 1940s. Same families who've always come, plus whoever's new to town, which is how new people stop being new. They come to the picnic and someone puts food on their plate without asking, and introduces them to three people, and by the end they're not new anymore. My family has a table we always sit at, not assigned, just always ours. Third table from the left under the big oak, the same table my parents sat at, with my grandparents, with their parents. I don't know when it became our table. It just always was by the time I was aware of tables. The food is potluck and therefore perfect,
because nobody coordinates, and somehow everything necessary appears, as if the congregation collectively knew that someone was bringing deviled eggs. So someone else brought the potato salad, and someone else brought the pie, and the table is full without anyone planning it. The church picnic is proof of something. I don't have a precise word for it. The people left to themselves will mostly feed each other, will mostly show up with something to contribute, will mostly find a table and make room, and laugh at the same things, and leave feeling more like themselves. The Reverend Mitchell has been there every year. He's been the pastor for 29 years. At the picnic he's just a man with a paper plate, eating somebody's macaroni salad, complimenting it the way he compliments everything, with complete sincerity. Like the macaroni salad is exactly what he needed, which it probably is. The kids run the whole time, which is right. They're supposed to run at the church picnic. They're supposed to be somewhere where running is encouraged, where someone who knows your parents is always nearby, not watching exactly but present, the way a town that knows you is always present. The church picnic is proof of something. I don't have a precise word for it. That people left to themselves will mostly feed each other, will mostly show up with something to contribute, will mostly find a table and make room, and laugh at the same things, and leave feeling more like themselves. We stayed late this year, helped clean up the way you do when you're not ready for something to end. Folded the tables back into the storage room, stacked the chairs the way they've always been stacked. Walked out into the parking lot in the evening, the oak tree still holding the last of the light. My wife took my hand the way she does when she's content, when everything is right. We drove home without the radio on, and that was the whole day. That was everything. Proof of something. People mostly feed each other. Everything. Everything. My son asked me last night at dinner, what was the best day of your life? And I sat there for longer than he expected, because the honest answer surprised me. I was gonna say his birth or his sister's,
or the day I married their mother, which would all be true answers, but not the first one that came. The first one that came was a Tuesday in October, about 12 years ago. Nothing happened that day, nothing at all, that's the thing. I drove home from work the regular way, made dinner the regular way, sat on the porch after with my coffee, and the light on the field was particular. I remember thinking, right now in this moment I am completely fine, not happy in a big way, not celebrating anything, just completely, absolutely fine. The way a sound can be perfectly tuned, not loud, not soft, exactly right. And I thought, remember this. My son looked at me across the table while I tried to explain an ordinary Tuesday to a 17-year-old who expected something more cinematic. I said the best days sometimes don't look like much. He said that's kinda disappointing. I said give it time. He said how much time? I said about 12 more years, give or take. The best day of my life was nothing special, just the light on the field at the right moment, just the coffee and the quiet, knowing that I was exactly where I should be. It sounds small until you realize how few moments you actually know that, how rare it is to be completely in the place you're in without wanting to be anywhere else. He thought about it for a while, my son, the way teenagers think about things with their whole face, and said, I think I've had some of those, not Tuesdays, but moments like that. I said, what did yours feel like? He said, like everything was fine for no reason. I said, that's exactly it. That's the whole thing. I think about that Tuesday sometimes, when things are hard or complicated, not to escape the hard things, but to remember that the hard things are in between those Tuesdays, and there will be another one. I don't know when, but the field will be there, and the light will do what it does. The best day of my life was nothing special, just the light on the field at the right moment, just the coffee and the quiet, and knowing that I was exactly where I should be, which sounds small until you realize how few moments you actually know. Completely in the place you're in without wanting to be anywhere else. I told my son to watch for his Tuesdays. He said, I'll try. I said, you won't try, you'll be doing something else, and then you'll notice that everything is fine for no reason. That's when you remember it. He said, okay. I said, okay. We finished dinner and went out to watch the field in the evening.
which is what we do. Completely fine. The field in the evening, that's the whole thing.
The old road through the valley that nobody uses since they built the bypass still goes somewhere if you take it. Just takes longer to get there, which is maybe the point of old roads, not being in a hurry to arrive. The going through instead of around, the seeing what's still there. I take it sometimes when I'm not in a rush, which means I take it more than you'd think, because I try not to be in a rush more than I used to try, which took years to learn and is still ongoing. The old road helps with that, doesn't allow for rushing by design. There's a farmhouse about 4 miles down that's been there since at least the 1890s. Still occupied, light in the window, smoke from the chimney in the cold months. Somebody's great-great-grandparents built that house and someone still lives in it. I find that genuinely moving every time I pass it on the old road. The old road through the valley is the long way by definition, but the long way has things the short way doesn't. Has the farmhouse from the 1890s, has the creek that runs under the road, has the particular way the valley holds the light. At 4 o'clock on an October afternoon, has the time to see it. There's a covered bridge at mile 7, 1 of 3 left in the county. You have to slow to almost stop to cross it. The boards are loud under the tires. It sounds like history crossing it. Sounds like 1887 when they built it, which I looked up once, and that's when they did. I think about 1887 every time I cross. I've taken my kids on the old road, both of them separately at different ages, made them put their phones away, which took negotiation. But once they did, they saw it. The farmhouse, the creek, the covered bridge. My daughter said it looked like a painting, which is fair, it does. But it's not a painting, that's the thing. That's what makes it matter. The old road through the valley is the long way by definition, but the long way has things the short way doesn't. Has the farmhouse from the 1890s, has the creek that runs under the road, has the particular way the valley holds the light. At 4 o'clock on an October afternoon,
time to see it. I took the old road last week, no particular reason, just did it. Crossed the covered bridge, waved at the farmhouse like I always do. Though nobody ever waves back, watch the creek running low but running. Watch the valley hold the light the way it does. Drove out the other end, back onto the fast road, feeling like I'd been somewhere worth the extra time. Worth the extra time. The long way still goes somewhere.
There's an hour at the end of the working day, before supper, after the barn is done, where I don't quite know what to do with myself in the best way. The work is finished, the evening is open, nothing is pressing, nothing is next. For about 40 minutes, I'm just a man standing in his yard. I've started using that hour deliberately, sitting somewhere, just sitting. Not with a phone, not with a task, just in the yard in the middle of whatever's happening. The dog comes and lies near me without being called, just appears like she knows this is the hour where showing up is enough. Last week I sat by the fence for that hour, watched the cattle moving toward the east field, watched the light move across the pasture, watched the swallows work in the air above, doing their evening thing, their efficient loops. The sky getting slower and pinker, the air getting cooler and quieter, the day completing itself. 40 minutes between work and supper, it's 40 minutes I didn't used to take. I used to fill it with something because I didn't trust the nothing. Now I understand what the nothing is for. It's where the day settles, it's where you find out how the day actually was, underneath the doing of it. My wife found me out there one evening, looking at nothing in particular. She stood at the door and watched me, then came and sat beside me without asking what I was doing, because she knew what I was doing. She was doing the same thing. We sat for 20 minutes without talking,
which is a luxury that took years to earn. I think about all the hours I rushed through, all the gaps between things I filled with noise, because the gap itself felt like wasted time, when actually the gap was the point, was where the living happened, in the 40 minutes between the barn and the table, in the sitting and the watching, in the dog appearing without being called. 40 minutes between work and supper. It's 40 minutes I didn't used to take. I used to fill it with something, because I didn't trust the nothing. Now I understand what the nothing is for. It's where the day settles. It's where you find out how the day actually was, underneath the doing of it. The light went on longer than usual, stayed pink past when it usually goes. The dog fell asleep beside my chair. My wife went in to start supper. I stayed out a few minutes more, watching the last of the pink, feeling the day settle the way it does. When you let it settle. 40 minutes, and nothing is for something. At the end of this particular day, which was ordinary in all the ways I've come to love, I'm sitting where I usually sit at this hour, which is the porch, which is always the porch. The sky is doing what it does. The field is holding the last of the light. The dog is where she usually is. The world is exactly as I left it this morning. I've been listening to music all day, the kind that sounds like the life I'm living, which is the only kind that gets in now, the kind that takes its time. It sounds like someone sitting on a porch in the evening after a day that was enough. Enough work, enough quiet, enough to be grateful for and about and because of. My wife came out a few minutes ago, set a glass down beside me without saying anything. Went back in, which means she'll be out in 10 minutes with her own glass, her own chair, the evening. We've been doing this for enough years that the choreography is automatic, that Love has become a series of small gestures, a practice they no longer feel like effort. This is what I want to feel at the end of every day. Not triumph, not arrival, not having gotten somewhere. Just this, the porch, the glass, the feel, the familiar sounds of a familiar evening. The sense that the day was what it was, and I was in it, and that's the whole thing. That's the whole beautiful ordinary thing. The music is still going somewhere inside. I can hear it faintly through the screen door. Songs about mornings I recognize, about roads I've been on, about the ordinary things that turn out to be the extraordinary things when you finally learn how to look at them, which takes longer than it should. My children are grown mostly. They're doing their own evenings somewhere. I hope they have a porch, or whatever their version of a porch is. Somewhere to sit when the day is done and feel exactly this. Whatever you call this, whatever word there is for it. This is what I want to feel at the end of every day. Not triumph, not arrival, not having gotten somewhere. Just this, the porch, the glass, the feel, the familiar sounds of a familiar evening. The sense that the day was what it was, and I was in it, and that's the whole thing. That's the whole beautiful ordinary thing. My wife came back out, sat in a chair beside me. We watched the last of the light without needing to comment on it. When it was dark enough, she said, "Good day." I said, "Good day," which is how we end them, which is enough, which is everything. Tomorrow I'll get up before the light and do the things that need doing. And somewhere in the middle of them, the day will become itself, and I'll be inside it. And at the end of it, I'll be here again on this porch, with this glass, with this field going dark, with this feeling that I don't have a precise word for, but recognize completely every single evening. Good day, every single evening.